Today I am finally starting this new sewing pattern. It is the Vintage Simplicity 3270. It is from 1957, I believe. I got this vintage pattern, and the first thing I've done is just to gently pin the pattern pieces onto my dress form, which is about at my own measurements. And I've done this because the pattern is a 31 bust, which is generally a 24-inch waist. And that feels like it will be a little bit small for me, so I wanted to compare it up against my measurements. And what I think I'm going to do is cut everything out with an extra 1/4 to 1/2 inch, and maybe add a little bit to the center back seam as well, just to make sure that it will reach across shoulder to shoulder on my body. The other thing that I'm going to do with this is I'm going to use the lining construction as my mock-up. So even though I wouldn't usually do something like that, I got a bunch of a pretty cheap polyester lining, and I will be using that to make the mock-up, which is why I'm going to give myself so much seam allowance on everything. Now I will show you in natural light what fabrics I will be using. So I have, for the out fabric, I have the Clove and Oyster Gray Glen Plaid blended silk tweed from Mood, and I got 2.5 yards because I will be making the matching trousers. And for the lining, I got this kind of champagne beigey colored polyester satin from JoAnn fabrics. Okay, so I'm going to start working on this finally. Start cutting it out, and I'm going to start cutting out only the lining so that I can make the lining first and kind of use that to check the fit. So one thing that I'm doing here, and I've seen other people do it even though it's not really a standard method, is on these vintage patterns, if you need them to be just one little bit bigger, instead of putting your back piece kind of right on the fold line, you can put that more with like the excess of the pattern piece, and it'll add in, you know, up to 2 inches or so, and cut everything else out normally. And it seems that you're able to keep the darts where they are in the back placement, and it doesn't change anything on the front pattern pieces. So I'm kind of going to do it that way and operate under the idea that that's going to work. And if not, then I'll kind of, if I need it any smaller, I'll just make a back seam, and if I need it bigger, then I'll add a panel, because I have so much extra fabric, and it'll be the lining, so you won't be able to see it. I want to note that it looks to me like the person who used this pattern before me did the same thing, because there are pin marks in the extra bit here, and right up to the edge, so I'm operating under the assumption that I'm not the first to expand a back piece in this method on this exact pattern. I have now spent some time making the lining of this waistcoat, which I've done as kind of my mock-up as well. So it is looking like this at the moment. It looks a little bit just like skin, which is a bit weird, but it is more snug at the waist than I was expecting. I haven't really been able to put it on myself, but I think this is in part because these side seams are super curved in, and even though I did add to the back seam, I think I may end up taking out these bottom darts a little bit and rechecking the fit to see what it looks like without them, because I feel like it might end up pretty tight. Or I can always keep them in on the lining, but modify them a little bit on the real front piece. These are also huge, like shoulder pieces, but I also know that all of this will be folded in a full 5/8, and I think that will be tightened up more, but that also makes me fear more for the fit of it. So that is what I've done so far, and I will need to fit it to myself, not just the dress form, and then see what I can do on the main fabric once I figure out all of these, all the fit. This morning I made my final mock-up adjustments, which the only thing that I really did was I let out the darts in the back a little bit because I thought they were a bit too, it made it all a bit too tight. So when I had it in the front and I put it on my own body, it overlapped nicely at the top, but the bottom part of it kept going like that, and it would have been really uncomfortable to actually wear that, especially with a full waistband, pants underneath. Hello. So I let out the darts in the back. I think I stitched a 1/4 inch away from the original stitching line, so it lets it out, what is that, 1/2 inch or something like that? So I made it a bit wider at the back waist, and that just holds the fit in the front a lot better. But I kept the darts in the front the same. So that means I can cut it out of my silk now and start actually assembling the whole thing. So you last saw me just cutting out all of the pieces for this section, but I went ahead and constructed the whole thing and now have it just on top of the lining layer that I had made as the mock-up. So the only thing I did differently for this is I pinned the back piece even a little bit further away on the fold, so it came out a little bit wider, and I think that has turned out really nicely. So it all matches up really beautifully and everything. And in here I am pinning it all together. I believe this is called bag lining, when you just stitch around the whole thing and then it gets flipped right sides out through the armholes that you don't stitch quite yet. So this was a lot of pinning and everything, but everything seemed to match up really nicely, even with my adjustments between the different pieces. So that felt very, very successful. In this clip, I have flipped it all right sides out and pressed the whole thing, clipped all my curves, clipped the corners. So this is what it looks like before finishing off the armholes and doing any buttonholes. I of course wish I'd done a little bit better pattern matching on the side seams, but really I wasn't thinking about it too much, and I don't think it's going to be super noticeable because the back looks nice and square and beautiful, and I think that it's looking really, really nice and pretty professional. So that's what it's looking like. I think the pattern will match up in the front, and buttons are next. So it's time for me to do buttonholes. So, and what I've done is create myself like a little practice piece with the lining against the actual fabric. I didn't interface this because I had kind of used scraps to interface my actual piece and everything. But I'm going to practice a couple buttonholes now. I have put on a darker, like a chocolate thread for that, so that I don't have big beige buttonholes on this fabric. I think the contrast would look nicer. So that's what I'm up to now. I have 5/8 inch buttons from JoAnns. My mom picks out all my buttons because she works there and does a better job than I do. And the markings on the pattern are for 3/4 inch buttonholes. So I'm going to draw up a couple of those. They might end up being smaller because these are, so I'm gonna just test a couple and see how they look and see how they hold up on this fabric and everything and what I might need to do. The thread matches the fabric so well that this is almost impossible, but I have tested a few buttonholes and everything at different lengths and even with different marking implements to see what I'll actually be able to see, and I seem to have a formulation that works the best. My goodness, my apologies. So I've done this one, which I'm not sure if it's at all possible to tell that I've done anything particular, but I believe it's 5/8, so the same as the button, or thereabouts. And I have gone around twice, not just once, because once is so thin, and it doesn't really hold the kind of weave of the fibers in place, but this one did when it went around twice. I think it just looks cleaner to do that. And so I have it set on a 1.5 instead of a 1 with the buttonhole settings, and a 12 stitch length, and I go around twice. Guess I shall mark them on the real thing, which is so frightening. Right, so as you can see, I have finished the vest waistcoat part of this vintage sewing pattern, and I am really, really pleased with it. I think it turned out so beautiful and so nicely tailored and everything. It was a long time coming because I really needed to just finish the semester before I could finish off these projects and everything, and I think this is going to be a little part 1 if I get around to it, because I have not made the matching trousers yet, but I have begun that process. So these are, I'm not making the blouse for this pattern, or at least I haven't decided to yet. So this is a dress shirt from Express that I thrifted for $1 a couple years ago. I never really wear it because I thought the collar was too high, but it looks really nice in this full ensemble and everything. And these dress pants I have taken in myself. I got them at Marshall's. They're Anne Klein's. So, you know, getting a kind of high-end sort of look, but on a budget. And I think it looks really, really nice and kind of stately and everything. And I'm really, really happy with it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't know if it was helpful in any way, but in any case, thank you for watching, and there, I guess, will be a part 2. So if you're interested, please do see that whenever it's up. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.